leadership in this country has been issuing warnings. They've been saying that this is coming, and of course that draft opinion which was leaked indicated that this would happen, that abortion rights might be taken away in the coming days and weeks. They've been doing things, outreach programs. They've been encouraging women to stock up on abortion pills. These are pills that you can take instead of having a surgical abortion early on in a pregnancy. They've been mailing these pills out to women across America, warning of this moment coming, but its full effect will only really be felt as of today and in the coming days and weeks when these laws are enacted in states across America to restrict or even ban abortion. There are, just to go into slightly some of the weeds of this decision, there are 13 states which have so-called trigger laws. Trigger laws mean that as soon as this ruling is handed down, or within 30 days of this ruling being handed down, as it has been this morning, these laws will come into effect which severely restrict or ban abortions. This means women who are pregnant in certain states, places like Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, who would have been able to have abortions up to 15 weeks or beyond yesterday, will now turn up at an abortion clinic and they will be forced by law to turn those women away. And I think the full magnitude of this decision will only be felt on the ground by those women in the coming days and weeks. But certainly you can see behind me the strength of feeling here. I think in the foreground you can see this lady who's on the loudspeaker. They are pro-choice campaigners, so they were in favour of seeing Roe versus Wade maintained. They believe that abortion is standard healthcare and a human right. In the background, you have the pro-life campaigners who are celebrating what they see as a hard-fought victory, the victory in seeing Roe versus Wade overturned, a ruling that has stood for 50 years of legal precedent undone with one decision. I'll just bring you a small bit of the dissenting opinion from 3 of the Supreme Court judges. They were 3 of the judges that opposed the overturning of Roe versus Wade. They are pro-choice, pro-abortion, if you like. Justices Breyer, Sotomayor and Kagan, they said, with sorrow for this court, but more for the many millions of American women who have today lost a fundamental constitutional protection, we dissent. That gives you some indication of their strength of feeling over this issue. President Biden as well opposed the overturning of Roe versus Wade. We expect to hear from him in the coming minutes and hours as this decision, the magnitude of this decision, really sinks in with America. But certainly a hugely consequential moment, a seismic moment for life and law in this country.
It really is, Martha. We just want to explain what's happening. Martha is outside the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. A really emotive moment as the U.S. Supreme Court overturned that 50-year-old ruling, Roe versus Wade. A lot of people demonstrating outside the Supreme Court, so we do apologise for any profanities you may hear or any profanities you may read on the signs there. Let's go back to Martha, who's outside, as I said, the Supreme Court. And Martha, there are these key emotive issues, aren't there, in the US? Gun law being one of them, and this, abortion.
Yeah, they call them the culture wars here, and they're used as political calling cards. Abortion never used to be a political issue. It was a religious issue, but many people on the pro-choice side say it's been hijacked by Republican politicians to become an issue that will bring voters to the polls, and it's clearly something that many people are very, very exercised about in this country. It's an issue which the evangelical Christians feel very strongly about, certainly, and I've spent quite a lot of time in recent weeks really exploring what abortion means to certain sections in America. For example, I was in Milwaukee in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a state which will severely restrict or even ban abortion as of today. I spent some time there with pro-life or anti-abortion campaigners, and they were saying that they don't even support abortion in cases like rape and incest, and that's the issues that are particularly emotive. Many people wonder how you justify forcing a woman to give birth to a baby that has been conceived as a result of sexual violence. Their response to me asking them about that was that two wrongs don't make a right, and that why should a baby be punished for the sins of another? That's just how strongly people feel about this issue. And certainly in most states, most of these 25 or 26 states who are set to restrict or severely ban abortion, there won't be exceptions for rape or incest. There will possibly be exceptions when the health of the mother is at risk, or when the baby has shown signs of serious fetal abnormalities, so abnormalities that can be detected in the womb. But generally this will be a blanket ban on abortion in almost or in half or more of the states in America. There are, as I mentioned before, 13 states which have enacted trigger laws. They include Oklahoma and Texas. They will ban abortion in the coming hours and days. It really does happen that quickly. 3 of those states have nearly immediately effective dates, so they will happen today. 7 could come into effect in a matter of hours or days. So you asked earlier, what is the strength of feeling about this issue in America? What I would suspect is it's about to get a lot stronger as this becomes a lot more real for millions of women in this country.
Thank you so much. We've had a couple of updates. We're going to leave Martha there. A lot for Martha to get her head around, obviously. A couple of updates. Steve Scalise, he's the House Republican whip. He's tweeted, he's just written, "Life wins." That's his response. Kevin Murphy, the Republican House leader, he's also tweeted, and he has said, "Every unborn child is precious, extraordinary, and worthy of protection. I applaud this historic ruling, which will save countless innocent lives. The court is right to return the power to protect the unborn to the people's elected representatives in Congress and the states." And obviously, all of this is in reaction to the US Supreme Court taking that dramatic step, overturning that landmark ruling from 1973, Roe versus Wade. This is a live shot outside the Supreme Court. Let's have a listen and watch when the crowd outside the Supreme Court heard that they had overruled that case.
A right to abortion!
So that was the moment that the crowds outside the Supreme Court heard that the Supreme Court had overturned that Roe v Wade ruling. Barack Obama, former president, he's also just tweeted, he said, "Today, the Supreme Court at Barack Obama not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent, it relegated the most intensely personal decision someone can make to the whims of politicians and ideologues attacking the essential freedoms of millions of Americans." So that is the latest. Barack Obama there tweeting his reaction to that in the last couple of minutes. Let's speak to Carolyn Shapiro now. She is a legal expert. She's a professor at the Chicago Kent College of Law. Let's start with where we are right now. How have they overturned a ruling from 1973?
How do they have the power to do that?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court always has the power to revisit its own opinions, especially in constitutional areas. I mean, there are some things that Congress can change if Congress wanted to pass a law changing a statute after it disagrees with a statutory interpretation. It can do that. But when it comes to interpreting the Constitution, the Supreme Court, at least as been our system for a long time, has the last word and can decide that it was wrong in the past.
Okay. And for people who don't know what Roe v. Wade is or was, can you just set it out in layman's terms?
Sure. In 1973, the Supreme Court held in Roe versus Wade that there is a constitutional right to privacy that encompasses a woman's decision about whether or not to carry a pregnancy to term. It set out some parameters. It didn't say that all and any abortion had to be allowed. There's some regulation and some prohibitions were permitted. But that was the gist of that opinion in 1973. That became very controversial very quickly in the United States. In 1992, the Supreme Court revisited it in a case called Casey. In Casey, people thought that it was very likely the court would overrule Roe versus Wade, but in fact, it did not. In a joint opinion issued by three Republican-appointed justices, and the court held essentially that it was going to keep the core of Roe intact. And since then, there has continued to be enormous controversy around this recognized constitutional right. And today, the court has expressly overruled both Roe and Casey, eliminating any constitutional protection for abortion in the United States.
So what does that mean on a state-by-state level? If you're an individual who wants an abortion in any state, what happens now?
It depends entirely on where you live. If you live in a state that has already enacted what is called a trigger law, which is a law that was ready to go into effect the moment that this opinion or an opinion like it came out, reversing Roe, abortion is now illegal in your state, whether it is entirely illegal or illegal only after some very early stage of pregnancy. It varies a little bit from state to state, but about half of the states have such laws or have otherwise passed laws more recently that would make abortion illegal, or that even have laws that are left over from before 1973 that are now going back into effect. So in about half the states in the country, maybe a slightly more, I believe, abortion is, as of right now, illegal.
And why was the Supreme Court revisiting it at this moment?
This has been an incredibly hot button issue in American politics for decades. The Republican Party has consistently run on a platform of appointing justices who would overrule Roe. Donald Trump certainly ran on that platform quite expressly, and they've succeeded.
Why is it such a hot button issue?
I think you would get a lot of different answers to that question depending on who you've asked. But I would say that there are people in the US who believe that a fetus or an embryo is a human being entitled to the protection of the law. There are lots of people in the United States who believe that it is not, and it cannot be treated as a full human being, at least until it is capable of survival outside the mother's body. There's also a lot of research that's been done on the way that the conservative movement and funders of the conservative movement have tried to use abortion to rally the troops, that it's been a very deliberate attempt to use this particular issue to generate support for the Republican Party, and in some cases, perhaps somewhat cynically.
Okay, just quickly, let's talk about the makeup of the Supreme Court. Because that is key here, isn't it?
It is absolutely key. Right now, there are 6 justices on the Supreme Court who were appointed by Republican presidents and 3 who were appointed by Democratic presidents. Those 3 justices dissented. The Chief Justice Roberts, who was appointed by Republican President George W. Bush, wrote a concurrence in the judgment, I believe, and I have to say I have not had time to really study this opinion yet. So, but I believe he wrote a concurrence in the judgment saying what people expected him to say, which was that he would have upheld the law at issue, which outlawed abortion from 15 weeks on, but wouldn't have gone as far as the rest of the court did. The other 5 justices have voted to completely overrule Roe and Casey. 3 of those justices were appointed by Donald Trump. Justice Gorsuch, who was the replaced Justice Scalia, was the justice that the nomination that the seat that President Obama had actually nominated somebody to, but the Senate refused to consider. Justice Kavanaugh, who your viewers may recall was confirmed after an extremely ugly confirmation battle that involved under-investigated allegations of sexual assault when he was younger, and Justice Barrett, who replaced Justice Ginsburg, a well-known feminist, strong, pro-choice justice who died less than 2 months before the 2020 election, and who Donald Trump and the Republican Senate rushed through. It's also worth noting that quite a few of these justices were appointed by a president who did not receive a majority of the popular vote in the United States, and were confirmed by votes in the Senate that did not represent anywhere close to a majority of the American people. Now, that our Constitution allows that, so that's not unconstitutional, but it certainly raises questions about how such a controversial decision will be received by Americans.
Okay. Carolyn Shapiro, professor at Chicago Kent College of Law, thanks a lot. Stay with us. We'll come back to you. For the meantime, though, let's go back to our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, who's outside the Supreme Court. Martha, I'm sure a lot of people there are just trying to take in what's just happened.
They certainly are. And just to pick up on a point that your previous guest was making there are 59% of Americans favoured keeping Roe versus Wade in place. So this Supreme Court, these 9 judges, or at least 6 of them, are out of step with public opinion. And just to reflect on the magnitude of this is a seismic moment for America. A constitutional right has never been removed in this way. 50 years of legal precedent undone overnight, to the disgust, it has to be said, of many of the pro-choice campaigners, those who favour abortion here. I'm joined by this lady. Sorry, what's your name?
My name is Julie.
Julie. And Julie's dressed up as a clinic escort. Just explain what the clinic escorts do in clinics across America.
Sure. So we are partnered with women's healthcare providers, mostly Planned Parenthood, but we of course have other ones, and we escort women into the clinics in front of the protesters that are there to scream obscenities at them. Possibly sometimes they can get violent, and just in general. So we just bring them through and past all the people, and sometimes it can get very rowdy out there.
How does today feel for you?
It's been a little bit time coming here. We have expected it, but I am still heartbroken for all the women that this is going to affect, and for all the women, especially in marginalized communities, especially in Black communities, that will die because of this decision today.
Many pro-choice campaigners like yourself are concerned, as you touched on there, about the fact that this could drive women underground to get abortions, that this could result in what they used to call back alley procedures. Are you concerned about this, that this puts women's health at risk?
100%, that's exactly what's going to happen. I know that there are already plans for the underground. The lawmakers are trying to even criminalize the women that transport the women that need the procedures. So they are trying to criminalize you can't get them out of state, you can't get them in. That's what they want. But right now, no, we are organizing, of course, and back alley abortions will definitely start up again, and more women will die. They'll go into sepsis, and they'll die from botched abortions.
When you talk about helping women and doing outreach now, what does that involve?
It involves me getting back to work when I get home, because, like I mentioned, there will be women lining up, to get our health care. So,
whereabouts are you from?
Charlotte, North Carolina. So North Carolina is still a legal state, and it will remain a legal state as long as we have our governor. And that's all we can do right now. All I can do is get back to work, keep working, keep pressing people to go out and vote for the right people that will get this back on track, because they are very organized. They did this in 50 years is not a long time for this kind of thing to happen. And as you see the numbers today, I'd like them to be a lot bigger than they are right now. Some of us also feel that because it was released in January, it made it seem like the anger has died out. So we need to reignite that, or nothing will be done.
Thank you very much, Julie. Julie there was touching on how this is such a divisive issue. In states like hers, North Carolina, abortion will remain legal. It is almost divided exactly down Republican and Democrat lines. So when you see that map on election night and it glows up red and blue, it's generally the red states which will severely restrict or even ban abortion, while it will remain legal in the blue states. So states like New York and California have said that they intend to become what they call a safe haven for women seeking abortion. They say that women will be welcomed from across state lines to receive what they call abortion health care. And it's divisive not in terms of geography, but as Julie was saying, it's also divided down class and race lines. So it's generally the poorest women in those red states who won't be able to afford to take the time off work and to travel across state lines to receive abortion health care, who will be most disproportionately affected. I'm just going to walk a little bit further into this melee of people outside the Supreme Court. There have been people waiting here for weeks for this decision. The Supreme Court hand down their decisions at 10 a.m. on decision day, but we didn't know that this decision was going to arrive today. So I'd imagine as the days progress and the hours progress, that we'll see more and more people gathering here. I'm just trying to find someone from the pro-life side, the side that opposes abortion, if we can find someone to speak to. We've also just had the politician Marjorie Taylor Greene down here celebrating, saying that this ruling was a blessing from God. I'm just going to grab this. Excuse me. Hi there. Can I just speak to you about your... Okay.
Martha, I'm going to jump in there. Can you hear me, Martha? Hey, Martha, I'm going to jump in there and let you find some more people to speak to, because we're getting response now on Twitter. Have a look at this. This is Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's just tweeted 6 radical Supreme Court justices have overturned nearly 50 years of precedent, stripping away the constitutional right to an abortion. After decades of scheming, Republican politicians have finally forced their unpopular agenda on the rest of America. And she goes on there. Elizabeth Warren tweeting her response. There are a lot of people tweeting. This is interesting. This is Nicola Sturgeon. Have a look at what she's just tweeted. One of the darkest days for women's rights in my lifetime. Obviously, the immediate consequences will be suffered by women in the US, but this will embolden anti-abortion and anti-women forces in other countries too. Solidarity doesn't feel enough right now, but it is necessary. Let's speak to Jessica Mason-Piccolo. She's a former lawyer and now Supreme Court journalist. Jessica, thanks so much for joining us. I'd just like to get your reaction to that ruling by the Supreme Court.
This is a dark day in the United States for our Constitution. As you've already noted, no time in our history has the Supreme Court ever taken away a fundamental constitutional right, and in such an egregiously anti-democratic fashion as they did today. I think it's really important to dive into some of the details of what happened, because what folks need to understand is that this is a campaign that does not stop with abortion. Justice Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, specifically asked for the court to revisit other privacy precedents, because that's what we're talking about here, is the right to privacy. Other privacy precedents, including the right to same-sex marriage, the right to birth control, and the right to engage in same-sex relationships at all. So this country is headed down a radical path when it comes to rewriting our understanding of individual privacy.
Jessica, just talk to us and explain to us why you think it's undemocratic, because a lot of folk will be watching and will think, actually, it's not. That's how the system works. It worked. It's just not in the way you wanted it to work, right?
Sure, though that's a fair point. And I think, some of your other guests have already detailed in some pretty good fashion just how off the rails and outside the norms this current Supreme Court is operating. So let's set aside the fact that 3 of the most recent Supreme Court nominees were appointed by a president who is under active investigation in this country for seditious treason. That is something that should give everybody pause. We know that there were significant dark money campaigns to put those justices on board on the court, and that should also give people pause. But more importantly, when you look at the way people in this country vote, in the places where they can vote, in those states that haven't gerrymandered their right to vote away, overwhelmingly support the right to abortion in this country. What the Supreme Court did today was craft an anti-majoritarian rule. And it wasn't just an abortion. They did this yesterday in the decision to overturn a New York guns case that was 100 years on the books. They are acting with power because in the system that we have in this country, they can go unchecked.
And that is basically because the way the Supreme Court is set up and how they get onto the Supreme Court, right?
Correct. These are lifetime appointments. And at this point, the only remedy to remove a justice is impeachment. And that's a political process. And that requires political will. And what we haven't seen in this country is the political will to do that, despite the fact that we have 2 justices who have been credibly accused of sexual assault on the Supreme Court, 1 justice whose wife is actively involved in the insurrection investigation in this country. And yet folks are sitting on their hands. So I would no longer say look to the United States as the beacon that it once maybe was.
It's interesting because Mitch McConnell has just tweeted, and he has said the Supreme Court ruling is courageous and correct, and it's a historic victory for the Constitution and for the most vulnerable in our society.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that's Mitch McConnell's reaction. I mean, what folks need to understand is in this country, there has been a campaign to politicize the court with appointees who would do this kind of thing. You know, the case that the Supreme Court ruled on today got there in a very unusual fashion. Normally, there has to be some kind of fight in the lower courts about whether a law like the Mississippi law was unconstitutional. There was no fight.
Why? Why not?
Because all of the courts who had looked at this decision, at this law before, had said, this is completely unconstitutional. It is clear that under Roe and Casey, it is unconstitutional, and we have no power as the lower courts to overturn Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. The Supreme Court sat on this case for 13 times. It conferenced on this case for over a dozen times, and they didn't decide to take it until Amy Coney Barrett was appointed to the Supreme Court.
And the 6-3 ruling. So it's interesting, isn't it, that Elizabeth Warren has come out and said, what does she say? 6 radical Supreme Court justices have overturned nearly 50 years of precedent.
Yeah. We have never had a moment like this in this country's history. And if that is not the definition of radical, I don't know what is.
So what happens now? Who are the people who are going to be most affected by this ruling?
Immediately, abortion is now illegal in over half this country. And that's
how is that? Just explain. Yeah, just explain that to us, if you don't mind, Jessica.
Yeah, so 26 states currently have laws on their books that go into effect either immediately or as a result of a functional administrative process that now bans abortion. You know, places like Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, for example, and those are large places, states with a lot of people in them. We know immediately this is going to impact the most vulnerable populations. But it will impact all of us at some time, because the reality is there is no way to enforce an abortion ban without making all pregnancies suspicious. We already have a trend in this country of starting to prosecute and jail women for failed pregnancy outcomes. Oklahoma did it. We have a woman in Oklahoma who is in prison for a miscarriage at 14 weeks. That's not even a viable pregnancy. So if you think that because you live in a state that currently protects abortion, you are protected, you're not. You are now under excessive state surveillance if you have the ability to become pregnant.
Hillary Clinton has just tweeted. Can we bring that tweet up? She said, there you go. Most Americans believe the decision to have a child is one of the most sacred decisions there is, and that such decisions should remain between patients and their doctors. Today's Supreme Court opinion will live in infamy as a step backward for women's rights and human rights. Let's go back to Jessica. So Hillary Clinton weighing in there, as so many people are. But Jessica, there are a lot of people in your country who believe that abortion is a bad thing and it shouldn't be legal.
They represent a vocal minority in this country.
Okay, just talk us through that. How can something go through the Supreme Court, be overruled, a court case that's 1973, that's just been overturned by the Supreme Court, and you're saying to us that it's a minority of people in the country who believe that abortion should be illegal?
It's not just me. You can look at any poll that is conducted on this issue. A majority of Americans, not unanimously, overwhelmingly, since the Roe versus Wade decision, support the right to legal abortion. How is it that this country is in this place? Because the anti-abortion movement has made this a political cause of theirs for nearly 50 years. They pivoted away from school segregation when it was no longer popular to be openly racist in the United States. They moved to abortion as a way for political momentum. That's what they did during the Reagan years in this country, and it accelerated in the Bush years, and then it went on steroids during the Trump administration. They gerrymandered state legislatures. The Mississippi bill that passed isn't even written by legislatures in Mississippi. It was written by a conservative advocacy organization called Americans United for Life. So lawmakers aren't even writing these own bills. That's what's going on in this country.
Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for talking to us and giving us your time. It's been really interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jessica. Okay, straight back to our correspondent, Martha Kellner. She's outside the Supreme Court. Martha, you've just been getting more reaction from people outside the court there.
It's 513.
I have. Before we get started on that, I just want to touch on what I think is one of the most shocking sections of this opinion. So when the judges, the Supreme Court judges, handed down this decision, they write what's called an opinion, which is a fairly lengthy description of why they've arrived at this decision. When I spoke to Senator Elizabeth Warren after the draft opinion was leaked last month, she said she feared that this could open the door for other constitutional rights to be challenged, constitutional rights which are also protected, like abortion, by the notion of privacy. They are rights like the right to contraception and to same-sex marriage. Well, it seems that the fears that she had, the fears that are shared by many people across America, are warranted, because in this opinion, one of the judges, Clarence Thomas, writes, the Supreme Court should reconsider Griswold, Lawrence and Obergefell, the rulings that now protect contraception, same-sex relationships and same-sex marriage. In that statement, Clarence Thomas is opening the door for other constitutional rights to be challenged. So this really is a seismic moment. I think now we can hear from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and her reaction to this decision.
To make their own health decisions. Because of Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, and the Republican Party, their supermajority in the Supreme Court, American women today have less freedom than their mothers. With Roe and their attempt to destroy it, radical Republicans are charging ahead with their crusade to criminalize health freedom. In the Congress, be aware of this, the Republicans are plotting a nationwide abortion ban. They cannot be allowed to have a majority in the Congress to do that, but that's their goal. And if you read, and again, we're all studying all this, but if you read what is in the very clear, one of the justices had his own statement. It's about contraception, in vitro fertilization, family planning. That is all what will spring from their decision that they made today. It's such a contradiction. Yesterday, they say the states cannot make laws governing the constitutional right to bear arms. And today, they're saying the exact reverse, that the states can overturn a constitutional right, for 50 years, a constitutional right for a woman having the right to choose. The hypocrisy is raging, but the harm is endless. What this means to women is such an insult. It's a slap in the face to women about using their own judgment to make their own decisions about their reproductive freedom. And again, it goes well. I always have said the termination of a pregnancy is just their opening act. It's just their front game. But behind it, and for years, I have seen in this Congress opposition to any family planning, domestic or global, when we have had those discussions and those debates and those votes on the floor of the House. This is deadly serious, but we are not going to let this pass. A woman's right to choose, reproductive freedom, is on the ballot in November. We cannot allow them to take charge so that they can institute their goal, which is to criminalize reproductive freedom, to criminalize it. Right now, they're saying in states that they can arrest doctors and all the rest. What is happening here? What is happening here? A woman's fundamental health decisions are her own to make in consultation with her doctor, her faith, her family, not some right-wing politicians that Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell packed the court with. While Republicans seek to punish and control women, Democrats will keep fighting ferociously to enshrine Roe v. Wade into the law of the land. This cruel ruling is outrageous and heart-wrenching, but make no mistake, again, it's all on the ballot in November. The Supreme Court has ended a constitutional right. This is 50 years proclaimed a constitutional right. What happened today was historic in many respects. Historic in that it had not recognized a constitutional right and then reversed it. This is a first. And again, just before it imposed a constitutional right to allow for concealed weapons. How about those justices coming before the senators and saying that they respected, sorry to say, the precedent of the court, that they respected the right of privacy in the Constitution of the United States? Did you hear that? Were they not telling the truth then? Again, just getting to the gun issue, because really, in preparation for this morning, I was really in an exalted state about what happened in the United States Senate yesterday. Counterpoint to the dangerous decision of this Trumpian Supreme Court that they made yesterday, but a way to take us to, as the bill is called, community safety. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Right now, and I'm going to have to leave momentarily because we just finished voting on the rule, we will be debating the bill on the floor, and we expect a good bipartisan vote on it in the House. We congratulate the Senate on the work that they have done and the timeliness of it to be passed in the Senate in a strong bipartisan way on a day when the court made such a dangerous decision. We will, many of our House Democrats' proposals that are included in this package are that keep deadly weapons out of dangerous hands by encouraging states to establish extreme risk protection order laws, ERPO, otherwise known as red flag laws, help put end to straw purchases, close the boyfriend loophole. So many good things are in there. And it's not everything that we want, and we must keep moving toward background checks, but universal background checks, which will save the most lives. But this will save lives. and to listen to Lucy McGrath and other family members of those who have lost their loved ones. This is a giant step forward. Maybe not so much a giant, but a strong step forward. And if it's good enough for them, then we rejoice in passing it. As I say to members all the time with legislation.
Okay, we're going to leave Nancy Pelosi there, Speaker of the House. She's in D.C. We're going to go to Kigali and hear from Boris
some
Johnson.
of the worst horrors of the 20th century in recent memory, and now finds itself with a thriving social and economic life and near universal primary education. Today, Rwanda is hosting leaders representing 2/3 of the world's population, stretching from the remotest islands of the Pacific